Hey y'all, I'm Matt, and today we're going to be talking about how losing can help you win. So, what do I mean by losing can help you win? Simple. When you're playing a video game, there's usually one path, and that path is either you get through and you win, or you don't get through and you lose. And you keep trying until you win. Now, of course, there are some games where there are multiple ways to victory, and those then depend on your own definition of victory for you to feel that sense of satisfaction of having accomplished the goal. One of my favorite games, it's called Arcanum. It came out quite a while ago. One of my favorite things was the fact that if you wanted to get past a certain obstacle, there's so many ways you can do it. If you have charisma, you can flatter your way to get past the obstacle. If you have money, you could pay someone to show you the way past. If you have rare items, you can trade them to get past the obstacle. Now, depending on your definition of victory, one of those may suit you best. I could easily see one of those paths being considered a defeat or failure. When it comes to those sorts of video games, I'm a big proponent of yield quick save and trying each possible option before I decide on one. And that's fine because I'm playing alone with a computer, with the program scripts and the data and all that. So I get to decide, hey, if this is how this turns out, then I'm going to go with that option instead. Costs me less money. I still have all this cool stuff. Great. In D&D, when you're role-playing, you don't get to do the quick save. So you have to make the decision now. And victory can take on a lot of different forms here, but there's no do-over. And that makes each moment a bit more important because it's so open-ended, because you're working with other players and the DM to come up with an idea, to come up with a story, to develop your characters. We have the chance to lose. We have the chance to build something. Of course, as I said before, there's lots of ways to define victory. I'm taking it more so from the standpoint of trying to tell a story that is entertaining. So, my goal here in saying that losing can be winning simply lies in the fact that I want you to be able to reframe those little moments of loss, those little moments of defeat into great character moments, great story moments. When you approach a problem, of course we want to solve the problem, but also you're trying to stay in character. You're trying to solve the problem the way your character would. Of course, you might confer with the other characters, character to character, to find out what the most optimal way is. But there will be times where you don't have the luxury of planning and you just have to act. And in those times, you might have to make some assumptions. And that is where we can create some wonderful story moments, potentially some comedy. For example, your character encounters, say, a nobleman. This nobleman simply wants you to retrieve an item for them. Depending on your rolls, maybe you're rolling an insight to figure out, to sense their motive, to figure out what exactly they're getting at. Now, if you roll low and the DM says, oh, they seem above board, they seem cool, you know you rolled low. Your character doesn't. Your character believes this nobleman is above board. So what do? In this case, if you want to win the game, then you don't trust the nobleman because you know your insight was low. But if you want to create some drama, trust the nobleman because your character rolled low on the insight. Everyone's presumably for the table, everyone saw it, but your character knows, hey, we can trust this guy. Let's trust this guy. And we can see where that goes. You might end up handing over a powerful artifact to a big bad evil guy. Great. Then that may be a big conflict in this movie that is your game. And then you get to deal with that. You get to try to fix that. And that could be an epic arc. There will be plenty of times where playing and you're not totally sure what's going on. In the interest of winning, we might hold back. We might think, What can we figure this out? Does anyone else know? And that's valid. But I want to give you a little tool. A little tool that can create drama, it can create comedy, it can create chaos. But if you want to improve your roleplay, this is a tool you can rely on. It's the tool of the assumption. I know everyone's heard the phrase, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Which, I mean, in real life, you don't want to make too many assumptions because there are stakes. But in the game, go ahead and make some assumptions. I use an improv tactic for this. I had learned long ago that when you're in a scene, everything your scene partner says is important in some way. They wouldn't be saying it if it weren't. So by using that as your character, when someone in the town says something, when someone in the town does something, it's important in some way. You can make an assumption as to why. If someone hands over a loaf of bread to you, you can make an insight. How do they seem? Do they seem like they're trying to poison me? Depends on your role. Whatever the DM tells you, you can feel free to flavor it a little. Unless the DM already has. What I mean by this, let's say an NPC comes up to you and hands you a loaf of bread, wondering if it's poisoned or not. You roll insight, and you get a low roll. Your character, I guess it depends on what the DM tells you. Maybe the DM tells you, you can't quite tell. With that little bit, you can make some assumptions. Of course, you can assume they did. You can assume they didn't. But we can read more into this action, beyond just that threat. Why did they give you the bread? Ignore the poison for a second. Why would anyone give you a loaf of bread? Is it because you look malnourished? They feel bad for you and they want to give you food because they feel like you don't have enough sustenance? With that assumption, you can roleplay that. Look down at your body, maybe feel a little self-conscious. Maybe your character will say, oh, yeah, I haven't eaten in a little while. I didn't know it was that obvious. Whether it's true or not, you've made an assumption that you can play off of with the other player. If you express this clearly, you have the opportunity to role play on a different angle beyond just is this insidious or not. You could also make the assumption, they gave me this loaf of bread. I think they're interested in me romantically. And then you can role play that. If this is an NPC that you're going to see a lot and they just gave you a loaf of bread and they left, maybe you have a discussion with your other teammates. Maybe your character has to mull this over and say, you know, I don't know if I want to be the one who picks up supplies anymore because the baker, she's got her eyes on me. Why else would she give me a loaf of bread and not you guys? I'm a little nervous. Or it could be a positive thing of like, wow, I guess all that working out's paid off. If even the baker is interested, nice. And then you can have the other characters around you react to that. They might be into it and be like, yeah, you should totally talk with her. Or they might scoff and say, she's just being nice. But you have more opportunities to play by making an assumption. And if you're wrong, then it can be really funny. Because maybe that baker delivered you that bread in the hopes that they could get you a secret message, that other people wouldn't see it. And the secret message might be a warning of some sort. But then your character doesn't get it because they've been cherishing this loaf of bread. They've been looking at it, smiling whenever they see it, and then planning a gift for the baker. And then the baker, you get to have that wonderful back and forth of maybe your character is gonna confront the baker and say, hey, you know, I noticed you noticing me. I noticed the bread. I think we could give this a shot. And then the baker might say, what are you talking about? I slipped a note in that bread that I needed you to read a week ago. It was about shady goings on at the keep. I'm not into you. And then you have a moment that could be really funny. At the very least, you have a moment where your character in their assumption was wrong and you got to get a lot of role play out of it. So when it comes to role play, don't be afraid to be wrong. Sometimes losing can mean everyone wins. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please drop a like, drop a comment. If you have any questions or anything, I am happy to answer. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.